Three, two, one. This is a podcast for Black women entrepreneurs who are on a journey with their money. My name is Monique Carradine-Kitchens, and honestly, I'm on a journey too. You see, even though I've had great success in my career and business, it took a long time for me to overcome my struggles with money. But I finally did. Now, I'm aiming for my next level, and I invite you to join me on this part of my journey. Do you have some big money goals? If so, listen in as I, along with my expert guests, trusted mentors, and closest friends, share our secrets for creating the businesses and bank accounts of our dreams. This is Sisternomics. There is a movement happening across this country when it comes to Black women building wealth, and I want all of us to be a part of it. Hey sis, this is Monique Carradine-Kitchens, and welcome to episode 7 of Sisternomics. My guest today is Lynnette Khalfani-Cox, and before we jump into that conversation, let me ask you, how often do you think about creating a platform, a foundation for your children to become millionaires? How often do you think about setting them up with a foundation for wealth so that when they finish college or when they decide to go out into the world, they've got a good solid foundation to stand on so that they don't have to struggle? How often do you really think about that? Well, this show, if you haven't really thought about that, is going to help you start thinking about it, because Lynnette Khalfani-Cox walks us through her and her husband's strategy for helping their kids build a foundation for wealth. She has already bought 2 homes for her 2 young adult children while they were in college, helping them to establish a foundation for wealth. And she's also thinking about buying a home for her teenage daughter before she gets to college for the same reason. It's a brilliant strategy, and this whole episode is literally going to be a masterclass for building wealth for not just yourself, but for your children and your grandchildren. It's fascinating. In addition to all that, Lynnette is also going to share how she managed to pay off $100,000 in debt in just 3 years. In case you haven't heard of her, Lynnette Khalfani-Cox is known as the Money Coach, and she's a personal finance expert, television and radio personality, and she's also the author of numerous books, including the New York Times bestseller, Zero Debt: The Ultimate Guide to Financial Freedom. She lays it all out right here, folks. So without further ado, here she is, the Money Coach, Lynnette Khalfani-Cox, right here on episode 7 of Sisternomics. So Lynnette, welcome to Sisternomics. I'm really excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to share.
Yeah, so a couple years ago, I'm having a conversation with a really, really amazing woman. And we started talking about our kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was asking her what she planned to do to, help her kids kind of get set up, because at that point they were transitioning into adulthood and,
Right.
getting into their own lives and whatnot. And she was like, "Girl, I'm not doing nothing for them. They're gonna have to figure it out and make a way just like I had to do." And I was like, whoa, because that was at the point when I was really starting to really research and understand this whole legacy building thing. And I was like, whoa. And then when I read an article that you were featured in just the other day about how you purchased a condo, a home basically for your daughter who was just going off, in college, and you had purchased a home for her
Mm-hmm.
as her graduation gift, if you will. I thought to myself, that's the way you do it. That is the beginning of true legacy building. So kudos to you for doing that. Can you talk more about why you and your family made the decision to purchase a home for your daughter as opposed to setting her up in a dorm?
Right. So this story, which ran in Business Insider, has gotten so much play. People are like, "Oh my God, tell me this strategy," and I want to learn more about it. So I'm actually really, really super excited to explain it in a little bit more depth and context. So first, let me say it wasn't a graduation gift for her. We actually bought the condo for her in Austin. She went to the University of Texas at Austin. while she was a sophomore in college. And initially, the impetus for us buying it was actually to try to save money on tuition, because some folks may not know this, but if you are, an out-of-state student, you're considered an out-of-state resident at a public college in the U.S., they typically charge those students anywhere from 2 to 3 times as much in tuition. So our daughter in her freshman year, she had pretty much, almost a full ride. She was a very outstanding student. She was an A student. She had, a 2230 SAT score. She was a National Merit Scholar. And she won a ton of scholarship money. So we were like, woohoo, college for her is going to be practically free. Well, the first year it was. However, in her first semester of college, she had a lot of difficulty adapting and just, going from, our small town. We lived in New Jersey at the time, in a small area, which had literally the whole town was 7,500 people. And then, so she went from the Northeast to the South, to Texas, onto a, 50,000 person campus, and transition, living on her own, So anyway, she had a lot of adjustment issues. And frankly, she did poorly her first semester, which was a huge shock to all of us, because she had been, this A student her whole life and blah, blah, blah. So what had happened was she was on probation basically after her first semester. And I was like, what? This is not my child. I don't even understand. How could this have happened? So second semester, she totally got it back together and she bounced back. She was her normal good self. Next year, she was on the dean's list again. She did great, and she wound up, graduating in 3.5 years instead of 4 years. So she was fine. However, in the course of all of that, we were like, oh, well, I guess we got to come out of pocket now, an extra 30 something $1,000 in tuition, because she was required, in order to keep her scholarship, she was required to have at least a 3.5 GPA. And at the end of her academic year, because she had done poorly that first semester, the average didn't come out to 3.5. Right. So I started researching. I found out that in the state of Texas, one of the ways that students can establish residency was via property ownership, and, having a property that they're own and that they're on the deed and where they live there, et cetera. So my husband, Earl, and I decided to double down. We said, we know she's going to do well. She's not, it wasn't like she was some, girl out there running wild or just, not applying herself or not trying. So we told her the game plan. We said, look, we want to give you a good start anyway. We want to purchase your first home for you. We're going to do it sooner than expected. And this is going to be a way in which you're going to establish residency, because she loved Austin, wanted to stay there. And of course, she's there now. And so we said, we'll buy the property. We'll put a 10% down payment. And again, your job is to be a good student. That's where your efforts have to go. And if you do what you're supposed to do, you're going to get out of college. And instead of us paying, 30 something $1,000 a year in tuition, when she gets in-state residency, it's $10,000 a year in tuition. So it was a big difference. And of course, not living in the dorms means instead of, about 10 or 11,000 in room and board, and living in the condo meant that her housing cost was effectively free, because the mortgage on the property was $1,400 a month. And she had 2 roommates, and the 2 roommates paid $1,400 a month. Wow. So, yeah. So that was the sort of why we first sort of stumbled into this strategy. But then we started thinking like, this worked out really well. Like this was, so for 3 years straight, her roommates, they paid on time. Really, the parents paid on time, I should say, and it really worked flawlessly. So fast forward, our son, who is currently a sophomore in college, he's in Raleigh, North Carolina at North Carolina State University. And in his freshman year, he had some scholarships, but mostly we knew we were going to have to pay. And it was about $45,000 a year for the school that he's attending. And he had about $7,000 in scholarships, but really the rest was up to our family to pay. So we went into it knowing, saying, okay, after your freshman year, in your sophomore year, we're going to do the same thing for you. We're going to buy you a property. And so I probably rode my poor son so much because he was like, "Ma, okay, I'm not gonna mess up. I'm not. I understand." So he wound up being on the dean's list. His first semester, he was on the dean's list because he was like, "I'm not gonna hear her mouth." So it's no
Right.
issue about losing scholarships or anything like that. But so, and in the first year, at most sort of top tier schools, they require the students to live on campus. So this has grown into part of our wealth building strategy because my husband Earl and I have a third child. She's 13. She's in eighth grade. But we've shared with all three of our kids that we want to give you a start in life, and we want your start to be different than ours. When I got out of college, I went to grad school at USC in Los Angeles, and I came out of school with 40,000 in student loans. And I was determined that my kids would not have that debt hanging over their heads. In my childhood, teenage years into early adulthood, I lived in two-bedroom apartments my entire life. And I didn't have my first home until I was in my mid 20s when I bought it when I was married. And so my kids have had a different life. They've, grown up in homes, but now they're both homeowners. So
That is
with
amazing.
with my son, we went and this year we bought a townhouse for him, and we actually paid cash for that. So there's no mortgage or anything like that. And now we're getting him. We closed in August, and my husband's been going out there. They've been doing some renovations, and now the place is ready for rental. He's going to have a roommate in there as well. But the bottom line is that we've told all three of our kids, we want to do three things for you. We're going to buy you your first house. We're going to pay for college so you will not have student loan debt to worry about. And we'll buy you your first car. So the oldest child, her name is Aziza. She's 22. Again, she's already graduated last year from college. She's in Austin. She's working. She's doing great. She's in fact engaged to get married next year.
Oh,
And
nice.
so it all worked out. We got her the condo. We paid for her college. She doesn't have to pay any student loans, and we bought her the car. So she has officially launched. You know what I mean? So,
Yes,
but
yes.
we teach our kids about generational wealth and about how debt can be crippling. And we don't want to pass on a legacy of debt and just sort of, the mindset that each generation can't do better, because each generation should do better. And so that's kind of how we got into that.
This is awesome. This is something that I have thought about, have talked about relentlessly for the past couple of years, that we as African American families, right, set our kids up to do exactly that. Because you talk about $30,000 in school debt. Some of these people are coming out with
I know.
$150,000 in debt, no promising prospects for jobs.
Hmm.
They're just looking at this debt like, I don't know how I'm gonna pay this, right?
Exactly.
They don't have a home. They don't have a car. They're driving Uber on the side, which is nothing wrong with that. But it's just this, it's a real big mess. And so my desire is to do, like, you are my dream come true. Your family, y'all are my dream come true for all of us, because I'm so grateful that my parents were able to pay off my college. I had no debt coming out, and I didn't really realize the value of that until much, much later in life. But the same thing, I want my son, he's only 16 right now, but I want him to have the same thing, have a healthy foundation when he gets out of school. I think that's one of the greatest gifts that we could give. However, like you said, I mean, you came from a much different background.
Completely
So
different.
and and that's what I want to know more about. I want to know more about your money story, and then, how you came into this awareness of, understanding, you know so much about money, but this importance of wealth building.
Right. Well,
Give me that story.
sure. So my parents were both from New York. My dad was from Harlem. My daddy was a shoe shine man in Harlem. So I definitely was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth by any stretch of the imagination. His father was a shoe shine man, and his father was a shoe shine man. So 3 generation of Black men in Harlem, shoe shine men. Okay. So my parents actually, first, my dad moved from New York to Los Angeles because he actually wanted to pursue acting, believe it or not. That was a whole nother story. And he actually did. But that's how the family moved from the East Coast to the West Coast. And I grew up in Southern Cal. But when I was 7, my parents divorced. And my parents had 5 daughters together. And so when I tell you about, living in 2-bedroom apartments my whole life, you have to picture this, okay, Monique, that my mother was in 1 bedroom and the 5 of us, 5 girls in 1 bedroom. 5.
Wow.
2 sets of bunk beds, okay? My sister Cheryl on the top bunk bed, Debbie, the next one on the bottom bunk bed, then my sister Denise on the next bunk bed on the top, and then me and my sister Hope, the youngest one, the 5 of us on that bottom bunk bed, okay?
Wow.
So, yeah. So now my kids, I'm like, oh, y'all can share a room. Don't even talk to me about that, okay? Because I had to be in there
Right.
before the sisters. You'll be all right. But in any event, because my mom largely had to struggle, mostly raising us on her own, she did not get all the child support she was supposed to get. And she had to, work 2 and 3 jobs. It was hard for her. And so I also grew up in Southern California during the time of busing, where mostly, students of color, African American students, Latino students in the central part of Los Angeles, we were bused to very wealthy white neighborhoods, to Brentwood, California. I went to Paul Revere Junior High School. I went to Canyon Elementary in Brentwood. I went to Pacific Palisades High School. And then I had to beg my mother and, ultimately to come back to my own neighborhood high school, to Dorsey High School in the central part of Los Angeles. But long story short, the reason I relate that to my own money story is that I saw 2 worlds. I mean, I saw, my Black friends, my Latino friends in my own community, which was, basically very, low income and or working class. And then when I was bused out to, Palisades and Brentwood, I saw all my friends out there had big houses, pools in the back. And, and they were like, oh, you can come. I mean, and everybody mixed and mingled. To be honest with you, it was like, I don't want to romanticize it too much, but it was pretty much like 25% white, 25% Asian, 25% Latino, 25% Black. And everybody mixed and mingled. Everybody dated. Everybody, mostly, but pretty much got along. So, but my white friends lived a totally different lifestyle, and it was apparent that there was a socioeconomic difference in terms of their lives and what I went home to every day. And I noticed that. And so when I also saw my mother struggling, pretty much relying on credit cards, robbing Peter to pay Paul, constantly trying to budget and scrimp, I actually just thought that was just the norm. I knew that there was another possibility. I saw how other people lived, but I was just like, okay, this is what you do. If you don't have if you don't have the money to pay your bills, you use your credit card. Or if you don't have it, you pay this one, but don't pay this one. You work it out, And so
Right.
well, by the time I graduated from college and even started working, I had fallen into some bad fiscal habits and patterns. And so I used credit a lot as a crutch. I bought things and said, oh, I'll worry about how I'm going to pay for it later, more or less. And then I got to this point in my early 30s, where I decided to just tally it all up, added up all my bills, and girl, I had $100,000 in credit card debt alone. Okay.
Whoa.
Yes.
And credit card debt alone?
Yes, $100,000. And I was like, okay, this is crazy. Something's got to give. And so
Wow.
fortunately, I said, you know what? I'm gonna get rid of this debt because I can't. I couldn't keep going at the pace I had been going because I was getting maxed out. I was getting declined when I tried to use my card. So I was like, okay, you have to change. I was forced into change. And so I took 3 years. I paid it all off. I never missed a single payment. Then I wound up writing this book about it called Zero Debt: The Ultimate Guide to Financial Freedom. And it became a New York Times bestseller, and I just shared the strategies and what I did to get out of debt, to tell others, look, if I can get out of $100,000 in credit card debt, I know that you can too. And since then,
Yeah, and in 3 years, no
three
less. I mean,
years.
that's a very short amount of time. That's good.
And since then, it's really been all about, and that was 2004 that I wrote Zero Debt and finished paying off my credit card debt. And ironically, in the 15 years since then, we've done the second edition of Zero Debt. And then more recently, we did the third edition because in America, the debt problem has just gotten worse. We have $1 trillion rather in credit card debt outstanding, 1.5 trillion on the student loan front. So I've been able to get to the other side and become a saver and an investor and start on the wealth building front. And really, all that we do now is for our kids. It's just like we're just building and showing our children a different way. And hopefully, to the extent that we can inspire others to, make positive moves and do the right things for their own families, then hey, I consider that so much gravy, obviously, because I do think the onus is upon us. Nobody's ever going to care more about your finances than you do. So,
That's right. That's right. Well, thank God for you because you, like you said, you've been out here for a while doing this work, sharing this message of eliminating debt, building wealth. And when you look at the statistics of Black women and wealth, those statistics are really, really grim. And I've always given this example. I've probably given it so far on this podcast maybe 3 or 4 times already. But on the median, single Black women have a net worth of $100, and Black women single with children have a net worth of zero, like and in some cases -0. So what are some ways that we can begin to change this? Because I think that sometimes people feel like if they're so deep in debt, or if they're just working really hard and not making enough money, they may feel like there's no way I'm going to get out of this.
mhm.
So talk to us about some ways that we can begin to change this and begin to build a legacy of wealth for our families, if not like what you and your family are doing, at least taking small steps. What can we do?
Correct. And you hit the nail on the head there in emphasizing small steps. People think like, okay, well, I know I should invest, but I don't have $1,000 a month to put in the stock market, or I can't buy a property right now, or whatever. And it's not about making those major big money moves, because you do have to truly build step by step. If you say, you know what, I'm prepared to become a consistent, disciplined saver, that's a great way to move towards wealth building. And consistency and discipline is about being committed. It's about doing something month after month, regardless of everything else that's going on in your life. So, what is that number for you? If you say, I could save $20 a month, then save your $20 a month. If it's $5 a week times 4 weeks, in a month, it's $20. But put your $5 a week aside, save your $20 a month. You know why that's so important? Because you need to get into the habit of saving and into the habit of practicing solid financial practices in order to build wealth. And so it's not so much about the dollar amount, it's about the discipline that's attached to the financial practice or the financial habit. So for starters, you got to make a commitment. I mean, you have to change your mindset, and also to understand that it's not just about today. I get it that everybody has bills for today. I mean, we all got to keep the lights on, and, you want to maintain that roof over your head, and so forth and so on. But one huge barrier to wealth building is a failure to have far vision. And that means an outlook for the future. And if you're only doing things, if you're only actually applying steps in your life and taking action that is related to today, you've really effectively failed to plan. And that will lead to failure in terms of financial results in the future. So you've heard it said, I'm sure, that people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan.
They fail to
You know?
plan, right?
And so some of it is about saying, okay, what do I want the future to look like for me and my family? And I know what I want my kids, what I want it to look like. And we even, use some humor in telling them, like we tell our kids, oh, we can't wait till we're fully at G&G status. This is what a waitress told us one time in a restaurant. We were talking about our kids, and she was complimenting us on our kids. They were younger, and she was telling us about her kids. And then I said, oh, what age are your kids? And she said, honey, my kids are G&G. And I said, excuse me? She said, grown and gone.
Grown and gone.
And I was like, oh, yes. So ever since then, Earl and I have been like, yeah, that's what we're waiting to get to G&G status. So let me give you an example of how this, and again, this is just our own family example. It's the strategy that we're using is not everybody don't have to use my strategy. I'm just talking about outlook and planning for the future. So I shared with you how for my daughter Aziza, we bought her a condo in Austin. And I told you in how for my son, he's 19 and now we bought him a townhouse. We advanced, we progressed, right? In terms of Aziza's condo was 210,000. We put a 10% down payment. So we put 21,000 down. We paid about $4,000 in closing costs. So it was about $25,000 to get her into that property. And again, like I mentioned, after that, like the roommate's been paying it. So it's been, really nothing off our backs for there. But they're building equity. She's been getting equity in that property. Price appreciation is happening. So that's wealth building for her. And that's her property. That's going to be, that's our kind of gift to her, right? So for our son, we actually were going to get a mortgage initially because you don't have to, if you're going to try this strategy, you don't have to pay cash for a property. You could put, 5 or 10% down. You could just do what you want to do. You could put 20% if you want. But we actually decided, have a little stretch goal here. And then we just paid for that property in cash. Now, fast forward, though, we're thinking about the future for Alexis, our 13-year-old. So what I've been talking to my husband now about is, what if we got her a property now in 2019 or in early 2020? And the idea here is we would do it in order to generate monthly income for her for right now. Then that would be put towards her 529, her college savings plan, and also give her a jump on a property. Now, people might say, but you don't know where she's going to go to college. Correct. We don't need to know where she's going to go to college. That's not the point. We're not buying the property just to, give her residency. And I hope she goes to school here in Texas because we've since moved, 3 months ago, we moved from New Jersey to Texas. If she stays in state, great. We don't have to even think about that strategy for,
Right.
But the idea is just planning for the future and saying, okay, we know college is going to come for her in 5 years from now. So in addition to the 529 money that we're putting aside for her college costs, we were like, what if we got extra rental income from the property? And if you buy in a good market and you get price appreciation over the next 5 years, you sell, you might have all her college funded for 4 years off of this real estate, this property. So we're really actively, in discussions as a family and strategizing around like maybe we should have a little stretch goal and just go ahead and get that property for her right now. Again, it's 5 years before she's going to go to college, but it's because we're trying to use our far vision to kind of think ahead and to be disciplined in this approach for this strategy that we're using.
So you buy the house now, you rent it out. That rental income becomes income that she can use leverage for
College.
whatever is needed,
Mm-hmm.
college, right? And then if the house is definitely going to continue to appreciate,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. So if she decides, maybe I don't want to live in that house. Maybe if she decides to, as she gets older, she can say, I'll sell the house, put the money, the income from the sale of the house toward the house that I actually want to live in, or I can pay off all my college or whatever.
Exactly. And we're going to buy a place near a college. We're going to buy where students live, right? We're just trying to determine the market. And so we don't know, of course, where she's going to go to college. But if we did, and since we now live in Texas, we are thinking about buying here in Texas near one of the main colleges. Because if by chance she does go to XYZ school, let's say Texas A&M, for example, then it would be great. I mean, she would live on campus her first year, but then in her second year, she could live in this place that we, purchased for her. And then it's kind of like, oh, it actually worked out. But even if she doesn't, it doesn't matter. We can buy property in any, state in the country. The strategy is get it now, get the rental income, and then let it hopefully build up in terms of equity because somebody else is paying the mortgage down, but also price appreciation, and then sell. If you just want to sell and use that money towards her college cost, then that's just
It's brilliant. Brilliant. I love it.
fine.
It's just so brilliant. I love that so much.
So, but one or two other things I do want to say about in terms of just for Black women building wealth. So, in addition to kind of getting the right mindset, being consistent, and taking small steps and being okay with that. It's not like I said, you don't have to feel like, oh, I have to do all these power moves or some major thing. In addition to that, part of wealth building is about financial awareness and tracking what you're doing. So I do think that it's important to track your net worth. It's important to track your spending. It's important to track your savings. So let's take net worth, for example. You were talking about the statistics showing, the average net worth being either $100 or $5. I remember when I used to write as a contributor to an AOL publication called AOL Black Voices. And I wrote about a study, some years ago that said for women at the time, for Black women, the average net worth was $5. I cannot tell you how many, I got so many people first who bashed me about the article. They didn't know anything about me, of course, but many Black women were offended. They were like, I am not worth $5. My worth is more than that, and I was like, self-worth does not equal net worth, first of all. And then
Exactly.
so many people was like, who is this woman talking about we worth $5? And this white woman needs to just step down. And I was like, honey, I'm Black too, girl. I ain't trying to, So I was like, and I
Oh
said,
my
don't
gosh.
hate the messenger. Don't shoot the messenger. Okay. So, but,
Right.
but it is important to track your net worth. And so what is that? Your net worth is really, you have to tally up everything that you own, whether that's real estate, savings, assets, investments, etc., and then subtract everything that you owe, your debts, your liabilities, right? And the net result, the end result is showing you your net worth. Now, it might not feel like a lot initially. You might have a negative net worth initially, but I can tell you for sure, you can grow your net worth fairly quickly by doing things like increasing your savings, paying down debt, again, property ownership, of course, but the things that you do along the way to that are going to be positive in terms of making your net worth grow, all of that counts towards, building a legacy for the next generation as well, because you want to have something to be able to pass on, and even something as simple as getting life insurance.
Oh my goodness. Don't make me run across this room right now. I'm just, I mean, everything that you said, it just resonates so deeply with me because these are simple things. I mean, you talk about tracking. The reason why I believe so many of us have a low net worth is simply because we have not established the habit or the discipline of tracking our net worth on a regular basis. Like you just said, you have to track, I'd say do it at least once every 18 months, if not once a year,
Absolutely.
but you cannot change what you don't measure, what you don't
That's
track.
absolutely correct.
So, and the life insurance piece is a part of my whole philosophy that if something happens to me, God forbid, and God calls me home to glory early, I don't want my family to have to pass no bucket to bury me. Those days are over. So, thank you for saying that. So let continue your thought. I'm
Well,
sorry I interrupted you.
unfortunately, I have firsthand experience with this. So I told you that my parents had five daughters, and that they divorced. My dad actually later remarried and had another daughter, my sister Tiffany. And so there's six girls technically in the family, but the five of us who grew up together. Well, in 2014, 5 years ago, unfortunately, one of my older sisters, Debbie, she passed away completely unexpectedly.
Oh, I'm
And
sorry.
thank you. And I cannot tell you how utterly devastating it was for our family. Debbie was 49 years old. She had an 11-year-old daughter at the time. And it was just a huge, huge, huge shock to us. My sister, though, was on point in so many ways. And yes, she did have life insurance. She owned property. She had her business of her own, etc. And she did so many things right She had a will. She had done estate planning. And so even though we were devastated and grieving, that piece of it was never an issue. We didn't have to stress about, financially, and it didn't have to be any, passing the bucket around kind of thing. But it really was a wake up call. After that, my husband was like, okay, stand down, Lynette. Because I was doubling and increasing my life insurance. I was like, no, I'm serious. Because I was like, okay, if something
Right.
happened to me, I want y'all all to be taken care of. But
Right.
but this is another thing. Okay, so on the wealth building front, having insurance in general is an asset protection strategy, right? For at every level, property casualty insurance to insure your house, your car, to mitigate against risk, to make sure if something happens, you're covered. And then of course on the life insurance front, because tomorrow is not promised for any of us. And so sometimes people think like, oh, they'll try to do everything else. They'll invest in the stock market, they'll buy real estate, they'll do, and it'll take years. Like you could get, literally like a $500,000 policy, an insurance policy with a face amount of 500,000. In other words, that's the payout that your beneficiaries would get. You can get that for like on a term policy for like $40 or $50 a month. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not like super expensive.
Super low. Yeah. It's not expensive at all.
But if you try to build up 500,000 worth of assets, say by investing, then that'll take you, for many people, it'll take decades, or many, many years,
Right.
certainly at the very least. So the faster way to, again, be able to leave behind legacy and wealth is through insurance. So again, that's just another strategy I just wanted to highlight for people. It's a low cost way to make sure that those you love will be taken care of if something should ever happen to you.
Okay, this is really good. Two more questions I think are very important. You mentioned stocks and investing earlier. Okay. Would you recommend any type of strategy for investing for women that we should be thinking about right now, whether it's in stocks or other kinds of investments?
Yes. So on the investment front, traditional investing in the stock market, I actually typically do not recommend people start with individual stocks. I typically will suggest people who want to invest in the stock market go with mutual funds, no load mutual funds, low cost funds that have low or no commissions attached to them. But and that in and of itself is an area where you need to educate yourself, right? So there's, actively managed funds, meaning there's a portfolio manager who's kind of looking after deciding what assets should go into the fund. And then there's so-called passive funds, which really are just going to track or mimic a given index, like say the S&P 500 index. And usually I'll recommend people to, just get a nice, S&P 500 fund, something that's going to track that, and you're kind of good to go. But mutual funds in general are going to give you greater diversification. It's a low cost way to get into the stock market, and it doesn't take like a ton of your time, etc. However, I'm actually about to take a course, an online course, very soon about stock trading. I said I'm going to learn this and just see. I met a woman who teaches a course on it. Her name is Terry Igioma. She has a course on her site, itradeandtravel.com. And I was like, I'm gonna learn this because I know a lot about investing already. In fact, I've written a book called Investing Success. That was my very first book that I wrote out of my 15 books. But I was like, okay, let me see if I'm gonna even just, think about stock trading. And so I can be able to tell people with more authority, just my opinions about whether or not, in today's market, it's something worth trying. So that kind of thing. So I'll probably have a little more to say about that after I take this course. But separately, in terms of investing, especially for Black women, one of the best investments you can make is to invest in yourself. You can invest in yourself in your own education. You can invest in yourself by making sure that you have your career skill set as, kind of in the top notch that you can put it, whether that's, taking classes, whether that's increasing your technological skills, whether that's doing more networking. You can invest in yourself by investing in your own business. And we know that Black women actually are the fastest growing segment of the population in terms of starting businesses, getting degrees and especially advanced degrees, etc. So all of those, when you think about investing, people often think about outside, like investing in a company, investing in a business and other things. But invest in yourself. That's one of the best investments you could really ever make.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree. All right, that's really good. So with your kids, we've had this great conversation about them becoming homeowners at younger ages than most people, obviously. But if you look at the typical family, I have a 16-year-old son, a lot of the people listening have children. What are the key things we should be teaching our teenagers especially about money?
I think kids and teens first need to be taught that money is earned first and foremost. And then after you earn the money, there's really only four things that you can do with it at the end of the day. You can save it, you can spend it, you can invest it, and you can donate it. Now, let's break these two concepts down a little bit. Why do I say first and foremost money is earned? Because baby, you might be 16, your son might be 16, my son is 19, my little one is 13. And yeah, they sometimes think like, oh, mommy got it, mommy and daddy got it. It's like,
Right.
I work for my money. Okay. You got to work for yours too. You got to earn it. It's not just going to be inherited. It's not going to be from daddy. It's not going to be from sugar daddy. It's not from the lottery. It's not quote unquote getting lucky. No, the primary way that you get money, and they need this mindset, right? Is that you have to work hard for it. You have to earn it. Okay. So now after that, okay, now you have some money. What do you do with it? Too often, teenagers in particular, they are watching us, if we're really honest, right? And they see us transacting, they see us spending, they might go to the store with us, to the grocery store, to the mall, wherever. And so we've been sending them messages from an early age. And so children and teenagers, they naturally think, oh, okay, this is my money is supposed to be spent. So what am I going to spend it on? And unfortunately, that's a very toxic financial mindset to pass along to your children if all they see you doing is spending money. In reality, as I mentioned, you have options and choices for what you can and should be doing with your money. So yes, of course, you have to spend some of it because you have, things to pay for, bills to cover, things you want to get, etc. But you should also be showing your kids the value, the importance, and the need for saving, again, for putting away money for the future for some other goal, whether that's a short, medium, or long term goal. And then you should talk to your teenagers about investing. And believe it or not, investing is not so high level that a teenager or even a middle school or even an elementary school student can't be talked to about these topics and learn. All you got to do to get them started fundamentally is explain that investing is a way to make your money grow. That you put it into something that you think is worthwhile and then you leave it there, right? And that, I shared this with Alexis when she was very, very young. Like I said, Alexis, what if I gave you this $5? I said, but would you want $10? She was like, yeah, And I said, well, I'll tell you what, you keep this $5 here this year. And just at the end of the year, I'll give you $10, but you can't spend this $5. So again, you just break it down to them in very practical, concepts they can get,
Right.
right? So I'm just,
Yes.
articulating a way to frame it to even younger kids. But teenagers totally get it. I mean, they can take stock market trading classes. They can, do a lot more through groups like NEFI, the National Endowment for Financial Education, and others. They'll let them use simulators and practice and whatnot. So, but also we need to teach our kids about philanthropy and about, the positive things that come with giving to others. And the reason this is so crucial is that not only do our kids often see us just transacting and spending, and so of course they pick up that message either subtly or overtly that, oh, okay, money is meant to be spent, but you can put them on the right path just by raising their financial awareness early on. And so that they automatically say, oh, okay, so I just earned some money. I had a job, after school. I had a summer job, whatever. I worked on the weekends, and now I earned some money. I earned, $50, $100. And if they automatically think, okay, what portion should I save? What portion should I spend? What portion should I invest for the future? What portion should I donate? Oh my God, you've set your kid up for a lifetime of, good financial choices. And so that's really, really critical. You would be shocked. My daughter, Aziza, the 22-year-old, while she was in college, Aziza was a huge saver. She came out of college, not only, of course, no student loan debt, and because we covered that, but she had like over 11,000 saved. Because she was just a serious
Nice,
saver.
Aziza.
So, yeah. So, and again, she knows all three of my kids. They get it. They're like, I know, mommy, save, spend, invest, donate. We got it. The four choices. So
Four choices. That's awesome. And then also, one thing that I tell my community is tithe, sow,
right,
save.
and that's the donate
So it's
part. Yeah.
basically the same thing.
Mhm.
Right,
Mhm.
exactly. But what I love about what your daughter is doing is she's going to get to a point. And this is, I have to admit, this is one of my biggest regrets. I've been working since I was 14 years old. I've had some job in some shape or form since I was 14. And I was thinking, this was about a year ago, I was saying to myself, I should be more than a millionaire at this point with the money that I could have saved, should have invested, right? So that when I'm ready to buy multiple properties, I can do that without even batting an eye. But Aziza, bless her, right? She will be able to do that when she's 35, 45, 55. She will have options and freedom, and that's what I think wealth is really all about. She will have the wealth that will give her options to do what she wants to do, the freedom to live where she wants to live. And that is my hope and my prayer for all of our children, that they will have that reality. So that's awesome. That's
Absolutely.
awesome. My guest again is Lynnette Khalfani-Cox, and she is known as the Money Coach. Check out her website, themoneycoach.net. She's got a whole long list of books. And before I let you go, I just want you to just give us some quick tips about credit. You've written a book. This was from 2010 called Perfect Credit. But that's a topic that never goes out of style,
Never.
Lynette.
That's evergreen. I'm nuts about credit. So cash is king, but credit is like secondary on the list. Okay. There's so
Mm-hmm.
many things you
Mm-hmm.
can do to maintain good credit or to improve your credit score. You can dispute errors in your credit reports that might be on file with the credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. And consumer groups say that about 70% of all credit reports have mistakes in them. So make sure that you get your credit reports and make sure that there's no errors on them. You can do things that are non-traditional, like piggybacking. Piggybacking means you get added as an authorized user on somebody else's account. I did this also with my kids. So we have a long standing card, a card that has, for example, about a $40,000 credit limit. And we've had the card for, 10 or 15 years. And so we added Aziza as an authorized user on that credit card. She don't even have the card. We never even mailed it to her. We just got the card in the mail and stuck it in a drawer. But for her, it actually helped her to establish and increase her credit score. Now her credit score is in the high 700s. Okay. And so we're doing the
Nice.
same thing with our son now. And just, we'll be doing the same thing with Alexis too. You can also do things like adding your rent payments, believe it or not, to your credit reports. And that'll give you like a double digit increase. Because a lot of times people think that, oh, well, only people who have traditional loans, like a mortgage, a credit card, an auto loan, a student loan, et cetera, of course, those obligations are being reported to the credit bureaus. But what if you don't have a house? What if you don't have a mortgage? Well, this is a way for you to sort of get credit, no pun intended, but actually I was, to get credit based on your rent payments. Literally just paying down debt, paying down your credit card bills in particular will boost your credit score. And that's because 30% of your FICO credit score is based on the amount of debt you have outstanding. Doing things like making sure that you do not apply, certainly excessively, especially as we go into the holiday season that's coming up, for like,
More
yes,
credit
because all of
cards.
that is going to generate an
Mm-hmm.
inquiry on your credit report, and that inquiry tends to lower your credit score. So there's a lot that people can do. And of course, the number one thing is don't ever miss a single payment. So anytime you're 30 days late or more paying a bill, if you skip paying a payment, then of course your creditor can report you to the credit bureau. And one single late payment can drop your credit score 50 to 100 points or more. So you don't want to miss any, you don't want to miss any payments. And, you have to understand how the credit scoring system works. In a nutshell, if you give me 30 more seconds, I'll just explain the formula. 35% of your credit score is based on your payment track record. In other words, how well you're paying your bills on time. 30% of your score is based on your debts, specifically the credit card debt you have outstanding. Don't worry about your mortgage and student loans. As long as you're paying them on time, that's not going to drag down your score. But that credit card debt, oh yeah, that will lower your score. So work to pay down the credit card debt first. 15% of your score is based on the length of your credit history. So a longer, more established credit history helps you. So don't just close out an account after you pay it off. Just don't use a card anymore. But keep it to have a longer, more established credit history. 10% of your credit score is based on the mix of credit or the type of credit that's shown in your files, like a mortgage, a student loan, a credit card. All of those are considered different types of credit. And so when you have multiple types of credit, you actually get rewarded in the credit scoring system for that. And then finally, the last 10% is inquiries or new applications for credit. And again, I say, only apply for credit when you really and truly need it. Otherwise, you'll be dinging your credit and hurting your credit score by, having too many applications, too many inquiries that are lowering your credit score.
This is good stuff. Okay, I can't help but imagine when you had that $100,000 in debt, that your credit score must have took a huge hit. But not only that, I'm also curious as to how you managed to get that paid off in 3 years. Did you just put literally everything toward those debts?
So first, let me address both things. So first, yes, when I had the $100,000 in credit card debt, it totally sapped my credit score. It dragged it down a good hundred and something points. But ironically, it wasn't like, it was in the so-so category, like 680, sometimes up to 700. But as soon as I paid it off, it was like poof, then it went to 780, 800, that kind of thing. So yeah, and even now I have credit cards. I use credit cards. And on any given month, I'll see, like, if you, depending on the date that your, credit card balances are due and when you pay them off, I'll see because I'm nuts about credit, like I told you. So I constantly track my credit scores. I have different services and whatnot that I get alerts for because I don't want nobody to, I watch out for identity theft. I'm like, I didn't apply for nothing. So what? So, and you can do this too, though. I do encourage people, and that's one of the tips that I give in terms of Imperfect Credit, my book, to tell people to improve their credit score is to actively monitor their credit reports, because you'll see how your own behavior, you'll see the sensitivity factor and how, like, if you do apply for a credit card, what did that do to your score? Because you'll get an alert and you'll tell you your score, stuff like that. So how I paid off my debts, I'll just say it in a very quick thing. I did a ton of strategies. So when in Zero Debt, I outlined 30 different strategies because Zero Debt is written as a 30-day action plan to get people to be able to jumpstart their finances and knock out their own debt. So I did everything from using income tax refund checks to negotiating with my creditors to get all my interest rates down to like 2.9%, 4.9%. Some was 0%. I doubled and tripled the payments that I was making because I was making minimum payments. And then now I know, of course, that really minimum payments in the short run, it might feel good, but that really means maximum payments in the long run because you're just giving the banks and the credit card issuers extra finance charges and extra interest, month after month.
Exactly.
So
Yep.
I opted out of getting additional credit card offers again, because when you're deep in debt, you just don't need all that temptation, coming to your door. I cut back on all the frivolous stuff that I was doing. I used to travel like crazy. I still do actually now. but I can afford it, without going into debt. But
Right.
before, girl, I used to just be like, oh, I want to go to the Caribbean. And I'm like, I'll worry about how I'm going to pay for it later, But of course, I had to cut out all of that. So, and then even I had to make some hard decisions. So, my older two children, again, Aziza is 22, my son will be 20 at the end of this year. But even when they were in, this is, again, they were young when I was in debt. When they were 6 and 4, they were in private school. And again, I lived in New Jersey then, and it was ridiculous. You won't even believe. So, for a kindergartner, okay, and a preschooler, tuition was like $20,000 a year. Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
totally
Woo.
ridiculous. And I was like, I can't afford this. So ultimately, I took my kids out of this private school that they were in. At first, I put them in a cheaper private school, and then ultimately, I put them in public school, and they were just fine, and they both did extremely well in middle school and high school. And so that's another thing I tell parents: we're all worried about it. Again, I'm not going to judge, and everybody's school district is different, and blah blah blah. But in general, if you're not like in a horrible school district, a lot of parents are like, "Oh my God, I got to put my kids in this school, this private school, this charter school, this whatever." But your kids will be fine, you know. So I did a lot of strategies, and I started, budgeting too. I just said, okay, Lynette, you got to really track your expenses, because there's many studies that show Americans, if we earn $1, we spend $1.20. And that was totally me. That was me. So obviously I don't live like that anymore. So that just gives you some of the idea. Oh, and property. So I had some land that I had bought for in Newark, New Jersey, and then I sold the land, and then I used a portion of that, a chunk of it, a little bit, to pay off the debt too. So
Okay. Good. Good. Thanks for laying that out for us. I really appreciate that. All right, so let's round up. I'd like to have you share at least $1 million tip with the audience. I'm on a mission to get my revenues up to seven figures in a very
mhm.
short amount of time. I'm scared as heck that I can't believe I even set this goal. 18 months, I want to be in the seven figures. And I'd just like for you to share any $1 million tip with me, the audience, and then tell us where people can find you.
Don't be scared. Be excited about your goal. And the fact that you've said it and put it out there publicly, that's good, because now you have more accountability. You're going to be stepping up. It's going to be, on your mind and on your consciousness. So that's a good thing. So be one of your accountability partners if you want to say, Monique, girl, what you doing to
Yay.
get to that
Good.
to get to that seven figures you're talking about? But in general, for anybody who's in business who wants to grow their business, and some, might not want to get to $1 million, they might just want to be like, can I get to a good six figures of revenue?
Right.
You have to think about scaling. You have to think about the growth factor being exponential versus what you did before. What you did up until now was successful to get you to this point, but it won't be enough to get you to the next level. So, again, don't be saddled by the typical entrepreneur's curse. What is that? Trying to do everything, not realizing the value of partnerships, of affiliate relationships, of vendors and suppliers who can be in your corner, of a whole network of relationships, whether that's contractors, employees, etc., who can help take your business to the next level. And so one of the things, like my older sister Cheryl, I told you how my parents had 5 daughters, and then another sister that had Tiffany. So I have 5 sisters, and I still count my sister Debbie. I still say I have 5 sisters, even though she passed away. My sister Cheryl, who's the oldest of all of us, is, does several $1 million a year in her business. And one of the best things that she owns a healthcare company in Georgia. One of the best things that she insisted on for me, she was like, you got to get a salesperson. And literally just having a salesperson is more than worth their, their weight in gold, because that person who's actively pitching your products and services can really help you to scale and grow your business. So I would just say the $1 million tip is to focus on those activities that help scale the business. because you cannot do it all and you don't need to do it all, but you need to think about the model, the business model that will get you there in terms of exponential growth. And frankly, it's often, I won't say 100% with less work, but when you find the right strategy for your business, it's not about, oh, okay, I'm already working 60 hours a week. It's not about now let me work 80 hours a week. It's about being smarter and more efficient and getting the right things in place. A huge part of my business is actually, most of my business is actually B2B. So even though the end user, I'm helping at the end of the day, individuals who want to be better with their money and their finances, and I do coaching and all that, that's not not by any stretch of the imagination. Companies hire me. So, it's everything from spokesperson work that I do, TV commercials, media tours, a ton of speaking engagements. And then because we own this financial education company and we have a ton of content, like I said, I've written 15 books. And then on our advice site on askthemoneycoach.com and on our video based platform, Money Coach University, companies will send their employees there and they'll license our content or they'll put their employees, their customers, their prospects so that we can teach them about some aspect of personal finances. So even thinking through the
That's
model
awesome.
is important
Yes.
to really grow to get that $1 million or more business.
Love it. It's a lot of layers to it, a lot of different arms to what you're doing to share this message of money and finance, and I love it.
Yeah, and I love it too. It keeps me going. I mean, we've had our business now for 16 years. I started it in March 2003, and we're still going strong. Every year it just gets better and better. I mean, so I really have no complaint. And I love it though. It's so funny because sometimes I'm a Gen Xer. My husband technically is a baby boomer, but sometimes, I like to mentor and help people. And sometimes I'll talk to some millennials and they might be 28, they might be 32 and they're like, "Whew, I'm tired." Or sometimes they'll be like, or there's only so many ways you can talk about, XYZ topic about saving money, about debt, or about paying off student loans. And I'm like, girl, you want to be in this game for a long time. You better get creative and come up with some more ways to talk about it. I mean, and some more ways to teach. And no, when you really love it and you have a passion for it, you'll figure out 25 ways from Sunday. I've been talking about it for 20 years and I still love it. So, but I am a money geek and a little money nerd. So I don't know, but yeah,
Yeah. This is good. Well, I'm so glad we had this time together. So you've got a couple of places where people go. I know you got the moneycoach.net.
right. So that's actually my corporate
Okay.
site. And then I send people, when people want to get advice and information, I actually send them to my free financial advice blog, my site, which is askthemoneycoach.com. We have 1,600 plus articles on there, some video content, etc. So any topic, we have 26 areas of personal finance that we cover. So if you have a question like, how can I pay off my student loans? Or, should I take money out of my 401k to pay off debt? Just, whatever you might want to know about. Chances are you type that in there, you're going to find an article related to it because those 1,600 articles cover a lot. But then separately on moneycoachuniversity.com, that's our video based platform. And that's where I have a ton of courses online. And it's basically just me teaching on video about a range of topics. There's free classes and paid courses available on Money Coach University.
This is beautiful. Thank you. I mean, it just absolutely exceeded my expectations. I knew it was going to be a good conversation, but this was literally a master class. A lot of confirmation for me, a lot of ahas, and I'm sure the audience has gotten a lot from this as well. So, Miss Lynnette Khalfani-Cox, you are amazing. Continued success for a whole lot more years in business, and thank you, thank you, thank you for spending time with me on Sisternomics today.
Thank you, Monique. My pleasure.
So, what are you doing to help your kids build a foundation for wealth? Or if you're not currently doing something after hearing this conversation, what do you think you can start out with? Not everyone can purchase a home for their children while they're in college or in high school. I get that. But what are some basic things that you can do? I'll tell you one thing that we did for our son. We started a savings account for him when he was about 3 years old. And once he became a teenager, He would save regularly. We'd put some money in his savings account throughout the years. But once he became a teenager, we empowered him to go into the bank on his own, by himself, fill out the deposit slip, and stand in line, talk to the teller all by himself, just because we really wanted him to become comfortable in financial institutions, talking to financial professionals. So that's just one really simple thing that we have done for my son. Another thing that we've done is we have modeled entrepreneurship. Both my husband and I are entrepreneurs, so my son has seen us build businesses, experience the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. And so he's let us know that he doesn't want to work a job once he finishes with college. He wants to start his own business. And that's another key to wealth. It's been proven that if you really want to build true wealth for yourself, you won't do it in a job. The best way to do that is through having your own business. And so I'm glad that he's learning those lessons. Again, that those are simple things that you can start to do right now, no matter where you are financially. Get your kids started with a basic savings account. And nowadays, the kids are so technology savvy that they can go to one of these online trading companies and start to learn trading and stocks and things like that. Lastly, I think all of us have a responsibility to make sure that we have an estate plan in place. There's no excuse for when we die, because we're all going to die, for our affairs to not be in order. And suddenly, our families are thrust into having to grieve for our loss, but also having to figure out how to deal with probate court, how to deal with our debt, how to deal with our house, how to make sure our kids' education is taken care of. That's just a lot of unnecessary stress that I want us to bring an end to. I mean, that's like a generational thing that when somebody dies, we shouldn't have to pass a hat. We should have those things in place. We should have life insurance. We should have an estate plan. Why not establish trust funds for our kids? My son has a trust fund that if something, God forbid, should happen to us, he is set for life. And that should become commonplace among Black women, I believe, all women, all families, no matter what color you are. So these are just some things to begin to think about if we are serious about building a legacy of wealth for our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. Heck, why not, right? All right, you guys, I hope you've gotten some good takeaways from this. Feel free to leave me some of your feedback and takeaways. When you go to my Facebook page, look up Monique Carradine and just look for the Sisternomics banner that has Lynnette Khalfani-Cox's gorgeous picture on it. And you can leave your takeaways from this conversation right there. That's it for me today. I hope you enjoyed it. I will see you on the next episode of Sisternomics. Take care, everybody.